Hello, everyone, and inside today's Locked On Canadiens, the Habs played their third preseason game, falling to the Winnipeg Jets 4-3. We will have some instant reaction to that, and it's also Friday, which means it's time for the Friday Mailbag. We have a ton of questions from training camp to who we would replace on Mount Rushmore and so much more coming up inside today's show.
For Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 696 of Locked On Canadiens. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Matla. And as always, thank you so much for subscribing to us wherever you get your podcasts and for subscribing if you're watching our shining faces here on YouTube. As I said, I am one of your hosts. I am Scott Matla. And I'm joined, as always, by the active stick, Laura Saba. And Laura, it feels like it's been forever. They've played 3 preseason games, the Canadiens, that is. They have won 0 of them, but I think they're starting to get better as they go on here. So what are your thoughts as we head into one more game this week, Saturday, against the Ottawa Senators?
It looks like the Canadiens are kind of trying more things, which sounds weird. I'm noticing a difference. I know the personnel has varied night in and night out. That's kind of a function of the preseason, right? Everybody's going to get a look. The rookies are going to get more looks than the veterans, all of that. I understand that. But like once in a while, I'll see a play that looks new or something that I think might be a new idea that's been thrown out by a coach. And I got to say, Cole Caufield, always a sight for sore eyes.
He was one of my big standouts in the game tonight here. And not because it's Cole Caufield and this is a big Cole Caufield positive podcast, is he was by far the best Canadiens player on the ice tonight. And the folks over at Hockey Stats Card, that seems to back up my eye test from what I saw tonight. I thought Cole Caufield played very well. And it's unfortunate the game ended the way it did. One just utter bit of misfortune by Evgeny Dadonov changed this entire game. The Canadiens were leading 3-2, and then Dadonov had a puck just kind of skip off his stick, and Brad Lambert scored to make it 3-3. And then final seconds of the game, Nate Schmidt takes a shot. It hits Evgeny Dadonov's stick and deflects by Kaiden Primo. And it's good to see that they've gotten the introduction to being a Montreal Canadien out of the way early on for Evgeny Dadonov. But his line with Christian Dvorak and Brendan Gallagher was really solid all night. I liked a lot of what I saw, and I talked to our friend Ian Boisvert about this on Twitter, is Dadonov does really simple things to put the puck in better positions than they were at before. And that's something that I think this team lacked a little bit last year. They might lack it next year too, for all I know. And I really like the simplicity, but also like the high level that Dadonov plays at. I think he's going to be a really nice piece for this Canadiens team. But Cole Caufield and Kirby Dach, I thought, played really, really well tonight. And I know people want to see more out of Dach. And I think we saw that tonight. We saw a little bit more skill. We saw him using his reach and his size to his advantage. And yeah, they lost. But at the same time, I look at this and I go, you know what? I'm seeing a lot of positive steps forward. And Kaiden Guhle was everywhere tonight. It's a crappy way to lose in a game where you started to play really well as the game went on, and not get a win out of that is frustrating. But at the same time, the last couple teams that have gone undefeated in the preseason ended up being some of the worst in NHL history. So I'm not really worried about, what their record looks like in the preseason. It's just, have they put the best team together going forward now?
I think hopefully without the antics, this is a microcosm of the games that we want to see in the season. We want the losing results so we have the higher draft pick, but we want to see those positive moments from all of the players. I think with Dadonov, like if his bad luck is happening in the preseason, that's not a big deal to me because as you said, I had seen increasing praise for him as the game went on until that unfortunate moment. And to their credit, the fans that I engage with in general, chalked it up to bad luck. So personally, I don't think that it's something to worry about. I don't think that the preseason result is something to worry about. Although I do have to say, I am sick and tired of the Winnipeg Jets. I do not understand why they must always have a coward starting their games every game. I literally do not understand how they fly under the radar for being such a miserably dirty team.
So I was gonna kind of let this one slide a little bit because it's the preseason and I don't want to get worked up. But Logan Stanley is 6'7", a bullcrap stacked on skates, who can't play defense, can't do anything on offense. And the biggest part of this game that stuck out to me is that, yeah, the Habs weren't great, but in the third period, Kirby Dach blows by Logan Stanley along the boards. Stanley has a grip on his sweater inside of it and spins him around and has him falling over. So Dach grabs onto Stanley as he's falling, as is a natural reaction. And in that time, then the ref is looking at them. He is going to call Kirby Dach for a holding penalty here, even though Stanley started the entire thing. Stanley then punches him in the face once and then has a stick it as he's getting up, punches him again, and they get coincidental minors. And even the broadcast was aghast, and they went, how are you the vet? And this was the veteran official on the ice, because they're pairing up a young up-and-coming official and a veteran. And this was Mark Jonette, who is supposed to be the veteran on the staff here. He looked at that and went, Kirby Dach got punched in the face twice, and that's the same thing as him holding onto a jersey that after he was pulled down. And then they had to take several minutes to figure out that Christian Dvorak was not high-sticked by his teammate, but was high-sticked by a Winnipeg Jet. And I'm like, I get it's preseason for everybody, but oh my God, how do you lose control of a preseason game? And it's like, they're lucky that Stanley and Jack-Eye were not on the ice for very long at the same time, because Jack-Eye, when they were separating everybody, calling penalties, wanted nothing more than to get his hands on Logan Stanley. He looked like he absolutely wanted to just thrash that man. And it's just like, we don't need that crap. I think it was Kyle Capobianco cross-checked Brandon Gignac from behind, head first into the boards, and the broadcast went, well, he's apologizing to him. He feels bad. It's like, that's not what the replay showed. He cross-checked him and then put his hands up like he didn't do anything wrong. The respect for players is at an all-time low. I feel like sometimes we talk about how hockey is all this respect and this and that, and I feel like that's a load of crap sometimes. But Logan Stanley, you're not quite at the coward Mark Scheifele level, but like, you're the coward in training. So like, if the coward Mark Scheifele cannot be playing in a game, you fill in as the coward on the Winnipeg Jets, and you're on my list. You've been on my list since the 2021 playoffs anyways, where you got all of Habs Twitter real mad at me. So anyways, Habs play the Senators on Saturday night. We'll see what the lineup looks like then. I'm expecting cuts in the near future, but we got to transition here because it is Friday. And that means it's time for the Friday mailbag, and we have so much to get into, and that's all coming up next. But first, as I said earlier, today's show is brought to you by the fine folks at BetOnline. They are your number one source for all your football betting this season. So you can get all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis and articles on every single game. And as always, they have everything you need for sports wagering info, from live betting to up-to-the-minute scores for every single sport that is out there. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including baseball. The playoffs are right around the corner, MMA, boxing, golf, and even hockey starting in 2 weeks, folks. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, as I said in our last segment there, it is Friday. That means it is time for the Friday mailbag. And as always, if you want to send us your questions at LO_Canadians on Twitter, LockedOnCanadians@gmail.com. In the YouTube comments, just don't be a jerk, and we will be sure to get to your question as best we can. We will miss stuff from time to time. We are only human, unfortunately. And you have another way to send them. I am not giving you my address, so we're going to not do physical mail. Laura, what do we have for the start of the mailbag this week?
So we got so many questions that we are splitting the mailbag this week, and we're going to have half of the mailbag today, half of the mailbag at some point next week, whenever Scott deems is a good time, because I will be away next week. I'm going to go on a business trip, so I'll be away for all 5 episodes, but Scott has some exciting, fun stuff planned that I'm not privy to. I'm excited to listen to it, just like all the listeners. And then we'll also, I guess, Scott, that's going to be dependent on you, also probably have a mailbag next Friday. So we'll have 3 mailbags in the span of 7 days. Aren't you guys all lucky? The first one comes from Chenandler Bong, lovely listener on YouTube. There's 2 questions, actually. 1, can Marty St. Louis be my life coach? And 2, it seems that the expectations for Slafkovsky are all over the place. I think for this year, he needs to learn how to play in North America. For example, the North American ice surface, knows what works and doesn't work in the NHL, get used to an 82-game schedule. If he can get 30 to 40 points this year, I'll be a happy man. Am I that off base?
So, 1, I think Martin St. Louis can be your life coach. He is certainly helping me kind of relook at the way that I look at hockey and development, which I think is very important for a team that was stuck so far behind the curve in terms of player development and prospect handling, that having a coach who knows who wants to do all these things to work with them is really important. As for Slafkovsky, oh my God, are the narratives exhausting already at this point? If he does one thing good, he's going to be the next coming of Eric Lindros, and he's this. And if he doesn't, stand out in a big way, everyone's like, it's a bust, it's terrible. He just turned 18. Physically, he is absolutely ready for the NHL. He's shown that he can play physically at the NHL level. He's figuring out the pace. He's figuring out the spacing of everything. And he's just figuring out the little nuances in the game. And I know that we've said this, I don't know how many times on the show. You have to be patient. We knew Juraj Slafkovsky was going to be a project here. He was not going to be day one out of the box superstar. He has all the talent, though, to do that. And I think he's going to spend time with the Rocket, and I think he's going to spend time with the Habs here. And when it clicks, you're going to notice it very quickly. You can see it clicking in little bits here, but he's not quite there yet. And you know what? That's just okay. The Habs don't need him to be a superstar this year. They need him to have a steady development. So when they are ready to start, opening up their next contending window, they have that piece ready to go. And I am begging people, if you're going to get this worked up 3 games into the preseason about Juraj Slafkovsky, you're going to be spontaneously combusting by game 45. It's not healthy.
And I do think the question is valid. Yes, it is. Like, this year should be used for him to get used to the North American ice and everything like that. So I 100% agree with the premise of the question in this case. Next question is from Danny Joe 22 on YouTube. Question: as I've said before, British fan, fallen in love with the NHL and the Canadiens. Looking to bring my 13-year-old son to a couple of the games in February. I appreciate it will be much colder than we are used to. But any tips on other places to see in easy commuting distance in Montreal at that time of year? And I'm extremely surprised at how expensive tickets are for hockey compared to Premiership football in England. 6 to 8 times more expensive. I dread to think how much a season ticket is. Thanks for the content. And you know what? As a new fan, we love new fans. And sometimes we do forget that, there are some fans that are super new. So I think, it's a good reminder for us to kind of share background sometimes. It's going to be way colder than you're expecting in February. Just so you know, February is literally the coldest month in Montreal. End of January and then all of February is very cold. But as long as you're adequately dressed, you should be okay. Don't go hiking in that weather or anything like that. There's a lot of stuff that's connected underground, all of that kind of stuff. I really think that one of the things that I really love, and I really do hope that a 13-year-old would also enjoy that, is in Montreal, there's the Pointe-à-Callière Museum in the Old Port. Like, a lot of the Old Port stuff isn't there in the winter months, but that museum is one of my favorites. And it's not something that I feel like it's something that would appeal to all ages. Like, it's not something where, if you don't like museums, you're not going to like it. It's one of the most enjoyable ones. There's tons of stuff, depending on what time you're actually arriving. Like maple season starts in March, so like sometimes they start doing like the maple activities like in February. Obviously, it'll be indoors, pretty close to Montreal. And if you want, you can send us an email, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com, and let me know your email so that anytime I think of an activity that would be good for February, I can send it over to you in time for your visit.
Also, with the ticket prices thing, is that it's not like that around every team in the league. Unfortunately, teams like Montreal, LA, New York, Toronto, the more in-demand teams because of just the way their fan base or where they're located are tend to be more expensive. But seeing a game at the Bell Center is an experience like no other. It is something that I haven't had matched at any point in time. And if you're going to be there long enough and you're looking and you want to see more hockey but don't want to spend as much on the Habs tickets, there's enough junior hockey in and around Montreal proper. And then there's also the Rocket in Laval. There's the Lions at Trois-Rivières. Much cheaper, much more affordable options, and still just really exciting. And now with the way the Habs are set up in terms of prospects, if you're going for a Canadiens experience, when you go see these teams play, you're going to see names and prospects that you recognize, and you're not going to spend, several $100s on tickets to this. I will not talk anyone out of going to a Habs game. Go to the Bell Center and experience it at least once in your life. Get several hot dogs, get indigestion, watch the Habs lose 4-2 to whoever they're playing, because that's how the season's going to go, and enjoy it. And then go to Mapuye, because in the winter months you need hearty sustenance, and what better than Portuguese chicken and poutine? So
I've been muted this whole time. I was going to say I agree with that as well. But really do send me an email. I'm like extremely tired right now, so I'm having a hard time like thinking of things. So I do, anytime I think of something in the moment, I can just pull out the email and send it to you. So please email lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Create a burner if you don't want me to know your real address, just so that I can send you stuff that I think of to do around that time. Randy Hansen, our good friend on YouTube, for the mailbag. The Winnipeg Jets have now hired from TSN Radio and TV Sarah Orlesky, Dan Robertson, and John Liu. Can we, as Habs fans, expect a sharp decline in coverage? Well, I think Montreal, without John Liu, is just going to experience a sharp decline in presence. When I found out about this, I was so bummed that I literally cried. I have never in my life met John Liu. I literally like teared up at the thought of him not being here. We're very happy for him to get closer to home, or literally go home. I'm happy for him, and this seems like a really good thing. But I'm just so sad that he's not going to be covering Montreal anymore.
I think they will find someone to, step into those shoes at some point. Dan Robertson is a huge loss, because I know that he mainly did the TSN 690 radio calls, but he was very good at that. And when he got his chance to call the games, I believe, with Mike Johnson, when Brian Mudryk was covering, I can't remember what event he was covering that they had Dan Robertson filling in. He did such an exemplary job. And Winnipeg, for as much as this is upsetting for Habs fans, Jets fans have gotten some of the absolute best in the business for what they're doing. And it does leave a gap. I don't think it's going to be bad. I don't think the Habs coverage is going to be worse by any means. There's just big shoes to step in for all of, those replacements now. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do. The media landscape's always shifting, and we do wish Dan and John the best, some of the best at what they've done. And like I said, Winnipeg are very, very, very lucky for who they've gained for this upcoming season. We do have a lot more in our mailbag, and that's all going to be coming up in just one moment. We are back. It is the second half of the Locked On Canadiens mailbags, and if we missed some of your questions, we're not skipping them. There were a lot of them going into this week, and I know with training camp and everything started, there's a lot happening. So we will get to some of these in the following week, and by we, I mean I and potentially a guest, depending on who I can wrangle in to help on this show with me. So fear not, we are not ignoring you, I promise. At least I'm not ignoring you, I promise. Remember, you can tweet us at @LO_Canadiens or LockedOnCanadiens @gmail.com if you got a longer question. Laura, what else do we have from the listeners today?
We got a lot of suggestions for guests, and just so you know, we're just because the off season is coming to a close doesn't mean our guest selection is over. We had a lot of fun over the off season, but we are going to have some of the guests that we'd planned to have on in the off season during the regular season. We're not going to have them. We have many episodes, so all the keep those guest suggestions coming, and we will take every single one of them to heart. One question from YouTube. Lizard King 89. I need to know the history behind some of these handles. Like, please explain them to me. Sometimes I get such a kick out of them. Is this a good place to post a mailbag question? Yes, it is. If so, what do you think Owen Beck's ceiling is? I could see him in the top 6 if Doc doesn't work out. I am going to allow Scott to answer this question. I just want everyone to know that Owen Beck is Scott's favorite prospect. His answer should be taken with that lens, through that lens.
I do think he is a potential staple in the top 6 there. If he can continue to develop his offense, I think him becoming a Patrice Bergeron light would be a huge, huge, huge victory for the Montreal Canadiens. I don't think he's there yet. I mean, we're going to have to see how his offense develops. I know that's the biggest thing, is that he does well generating, but there's another level to still be had there. And I don't know what it will translate to at the NHL level. I'm not that much of a prospect expert, but I look at the IQ and the way he plays defensively. He's smart. And if you have someone who, looks like Patrice Bergeron in aspects of their game, you're doing really well for yourself. And I think top 6 is not out of the realm of possibility. I don't think he'll be a top line center, but that's also not the worst thing there. If he becomes a solid 2C, having a guy like that, if he hits a ceiling as your second line center behind Nick Suzuki, it's a huge win for the Canadiens.
Do you know what's funny about that is that in the responses to that question on YouTube, somebody did bring up Patrice Bergeron light. I personally have so much high hopes for Owen Beck. I do love him. I'm not discounting Scott's faith in him. I really do have that kind of faith in him as well. I'm just astounded at how good he is all the time. He was drafted because he has a high floor. His floor is NHL third line center. Again, that is the floor, assuming nothing catastrophic happens. And I'm knocking on wood right now because Owen Beck, we really don't want anything to hinder your career or your livelihood. If things work out at the minimum, then he's going to be a third line center. If things work out at the maximum, I think he's going to be, like a 1A, 1-2 punch, 1A, 1B punch. He'll be the 1B. Like, I do think that he does have to work on his production. I just love that his intelligence, like, he's going to be one of those guys that in the playoffs, he sacrifices his offense and just shuts down the first line of the opposing team. That's what I see in him. So I hope he develops accordingly. I'm just so excited.
What else we got in the mailbag, Laura?
I was talking about Owen Beck and I lost my place in the mailbag. Here we go. Rory Cochran on Twitter, on YouTube. Hey guys, next question for the mailbag. I find it to be quite the coincidence that Edmundson and Suzuki are both quote unquote injured at the same time. Is it a method of tanking or a way for us to deploy more rookies into the lineup?
I think it's a freak accident that, just happens that the captain and alternate captain ran into each other. It has given a huge chance for guys like Arbor Jacki, Kaiden Guhle, and William Trudeau to, play more minutes in the preseason. My big fear with Joel Edmundson, who has not played a lot of hockey in the last year or so, is these are reps that he needs too. And it's not like, oh, he can go to the AHL and we can call him up when he's ready unless they do a conditioning stint here. Is you want Edmundson to be ready because he's going to go right in. He's going to immediately play big minutes. Nick Suzuki will be fine. I know Nick Suzuki's gotten his reps and he didn't miss games last year. Edmundson, I'm a little more worried about. I think it's just a real freak coincidence that it happened to be those two guys. But there's a reason why the Habs brought 74 people to training camp is they have an opportunity now.
See them all.
Exactly. It's like, we have 9,000 injuries. Might as well plug it in with John Parker Jones and this guy. So I think it's just a good way to kind of analyze everybody who's in their, pool and inside their sphere of influence there.
And Owen Beck has been, the beneficiary of that. And he's really seized that opportunity by the horn. So Again, gratuitous, not even gratuitous. I think it's deserved Owen Beck praise on this podcast. A question from David C on Twitter DM. Do you have any explanation as to why Jakub Dobeš wasn't at the training camp? I mean, I never saw him play, but on paper, he really performed well last season in the NCAA. A 9.34 save percentage in 35 games is really an eye-opener. I really wished I could have seen him play. Really love the show. Is this just the NCAA thing?
Yes, it's because he's an NCAA prospect. The same reason why Lane Hudson and Sean Farrell and Jaden Struble weren't there. They cannot go to training camp and play these games because of NCAA rules. They would lose their eligibility, and that's
it's a scam, is what it is.
The NCAA
and the reason they can't do it is because they don't pay their own way. The Habs pay for it, so they're not eligible for that because that could be payment. Right?
Yes. If they are able to play their own way, I believe they can attend the rookie camp, that like the rookie showcase stuff, but it's very rare that they do that just because of, you got to get to school. Some of them do summer classes and this and that. So it is legitimately just absolute garbage, but that's the NCAA for you. So if you're the NCAA listening to this podcast, hi. I've never said anything bad about you in my entire life, and you can't prove otherwise.
Don't listen to any of our other podcasts where we mention a single NCAA prospect. A question from Matthew M via email. I know it's preseason, but given the games last year and all of his preseason action, in my opinion, Barron is falling down the defensive depth chart. The decision-making and defensive awareness have left me with much more to be desired. Not saying I can see why the Avs gave him up, but where do you guys see him at this stage? I struggle to even find a comparable that gets me excited.
The hardest part about Justin Barron is I will watch him make an incredibly smart play and skate well. And then I will, watch him make an absolutely, dumb pass to the thing there. And I think he, like a lot of these other players, is just developing still. I think he's likely going to make the NHL roster just because they're real light on the right-hand side of things. But he's far from a lock at this point. And it wouldn't shock me if he spends time with a Rocket this year. There's just some little things that he's got to iron out in his game. I think they will at some point. It's just right now, maybe he's not as polished as we originally thought, which is, that's okay. It's not the end of the world if it's not. So I am hoping that he kind of gets it straightened out here before too long, because I know Habs fans are likely to panic if it doesn't, turn out the way that they had hoped right away.
We've got 3 more questions, and then we're going to turn it to Nemesis Corner. One question from Eric via email. Assuming other GMs wouldn't give up a first rounder for Jake Allen, is he more valuable as a stabilizing presence and leader for the next 2-3 years, or as trade bait for a mid-round pick?
I think he's valuable keeping him around. I look at Kaiden Primo tonight and I go, okay, a rough outing. I still think he's going to be fine in the coming years, but at the same time, there's some work to be done there. And Jake Allen is a guy who is a calming presence right now until you're Frederick Deschaux, until Kaiden Primo proved himself, until Jakub Dobeš are ready. You kind of need that stabilizing presence. And I think overall, it's not the end of the world. It'll be all right at the end of the day. First round pick in the near future, sure, but who knows? The hockey world changes so rapidly.
Question from Evan G. Here's a hot take / Leafs jab. The Leafs would have won 2 cups by now if Matthews were captain and just John Tavares. I almost called him Justin Tavares. And John Tavares was never signed. Have fun. Thanks, Evan.
We're not a Leafs podcast, and I don't think Tavares is the issue with that team. I think it's that Kyle Dubas was basically strong-armed into giving Mitch Marner that much money, and they've been struggling to round out the rest of their, lineup there. Matthews being, the captain doesn't make a difference. If they don't have a second-line center, what's it matter, Tavares there gives them to a very strong top six. It's just they don't have the money to round that out. And if he's not there, who's their second line center? Alex Kerfoot, which maybe not. So as far as hot takes, I mean, it might be a little spicy, but
it's
I'm
a
not
Leafs jab though, which I appreciate.
Yes, I was like, I'm not going to go give them too much fodder ahead of this season, though.
KCD. This was a question from last week. So Casey, if you asked a question this week, it'll come up in the mailbag 2.0. If the Canadiens players were part of the Avengers, which Canadiens players would play each superhero? So who do we consider the Avengers? Is it everybody in Endgame, or is it like the primary?
That's too many people. We're gonna do the people from the original movie. So it's Hawkeye, Black Widow, Thor, the Hulk, Iron Man, and Captain America.
We need a Loki though, even though Loki's not technically an Avenger.
Who's it? Corey Perry can be Loki at this point because he's devious and evil, but he means well sometimes.
That's perfect.
Arbor Jacki can be the Hulk because he just likes to smash things. Nick Suzuki, large. Yes, Nick Suzuki is Captain America because he's the captain.
He's not American though. Nice try, Scott.
Look. Cole Caufield is Hawkeye. He's the sniper. Like, that makes sense. Who's going to be Thor? Because we don't have Arturi Lehkonen anymore.
Josh Anderson.
Yeah, that does work. Then we just need an Iron Man. We need the supremely almost arrogant kind of person, but also like the technological wizard. I don't know. I don't have anyone for Iron Man, but I had something for everyone else. But I'm drawing a blank.
Paid player on this team, Nick Suzuki.
Yeah, Nick Suzuki is the highest paid player on this. Well, Carey Price is technically the highest paid player on this team.
He can be Iron Man. He's handsome, charitable.
He also has enough parts in his knee to have an Iron Man suit, I guess. So
there's also the dad.
Yes, there is that too. So yeah, there you have the current Avengers. We're not doing Endgame because we do not have enough time to list all of them.
I was gonna be like, yeah. All right, we have now. It's time for Nemesis Corner.
All right, I have these in front of me. So it from Will. Why did Laura no sell Scott's very good 67 joke last week, and what does it mean for the future of this podcast?
Listen, we have great things in store for the future. We are BFFs. And I just missed the joke, and now I don't even remember what the conversation was.
And to follow that up, if you could replace Thomas Jefferson's face on Mount Rushmore with any other U.S. president from history, who would be the funniest option? Yes, there is an obvious choice here.
The reason that he said that, like, to me, it feels like he's leaning like Nixon. He wants us to say Nixon. You think that's it?
I'm going to say William Henry Harrison because he was dead inside 30 days and did literally nothing for the United States.
I thought that was a bit when I saw it on Parks and Rec. I thought it was something they made up. And then I went and looked it up.
No, yeah, he was dead inside 30 days because he didn't wear a coat at his inauguration. He's an idiot. So
literally, I thought it was a joke. And then I was like, because I don't know U.S. history.
Admittedly, William Henry Harrison, because he was only here for 30 days, but like someone who's like just completely forgettable, like Millard Fillmore, would also be very funny. If you really want,
sounds like a made-up name, doesn't it?
I mean, a lot of these
I know he's real.
Like made-up names. The one that everyone hated the most, and I want to say it was Herbert Hoover going on there, would be the best because everyone in America hated Herbert Hoover. So I'm going to stick with William Henry Harrison. I'm sure Will tell me that I'm incorrect anyways, but what are you going to do?
I know he was looking for something, and I really thought it was something like
When is he not looking for something in one of these, though? Like, we know his game at this point. That is going to wrap up this one. We do have so many other questions to get to. I will get to them next week when I have some time between games, since I will be solo hosting the show next week, but Laura is away. So if we did not get to your question in today's show, I am not ignoring it. It'll probably come out Monday or Tuesday, depending on how the games go this weekend and everything else. Remember, tweet us at LO_Canadiens or LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com. Follow Laura at The Active Stick and follow myself at Scott Matla. We appreciate all of you, and I will see you all next week.